All right. Starting these meetings, yeah, we're not recording. Starting these meetings is always kind of weird. So I'm basically just going to kind of jump right into this. Let me pull up the screen where it has all of my questions on it. Okay, so, I prompted you, I told you that the purpose of this is kind of get your insight on being a preceptor for teaching students clinical type things. Answer as best as you can. Let's get some foundation questions. The first one is, for how long have you been a preceptor or a clinical instructor?
So I am starting my 6th year right now. I started in the fall of 2014, and it is now the fall of 2019. So starting my 6th year teaching and being a clinical instructor.
High school teacher? Great.
And high school, yeah, high school.
Okay. And then, so you already answered. Okay, you're skipping ahead here. Current position, excellent. How many students do you supervise currently?
So I have a program of a little over 100, but the requirements for a good 90 of them are very minimal, where I'm only seeing maybe one student at a time. A lot of them like to procrastinate and push it all off to the very end, but I have 12 students in my 2nd year program that are responsible for a significant amount more hours. So 12 is the number that I see regularly.
Okay. Do you feel like that is a reasonable load?
At the high school level, yes. I don't ever see them all at once. And I don't have any specific documentation that I'm required to get for them other than just them logging hours. So at the high school level, yes, I do believe that 12 is reasonable.
How many do you usually have working a game with you?
It depends on the game. A varsity football game, I keep it to 4. Like a girls soccer game, kind of sticking to fall season, girls soccer, I'll only bring 2. Most sports is 2. Most events is 2 per game. It kind of depends on the time. So like if it's winding down towards the end of spring season and all of the kids haven't met their hours requirements, I sometimes will bring 6 out to a lacrosse game with me. So it kind of depends on situation, but I try and keep it restricted to between no more than 4 per game.
So on those days where you have 4 or even like the 6 at the lacrosse game, and I get it varies by sport, yep. What are some things that you fall back on to make that load easy to manage?
In terms of like just kids going everywhere, doing everything kind of type thing, or for the most part, like at a lacrosse game, we kind of just sit at midfield and watch. And so it's never really that it's difficult to manage. Most of I have pretty clear expectations for my students and how they're and kind of set forward conduct guidelines in the beginning of the year. So they all know that they're not going to be goofing off on their phones, hanging out with athletes. They're there to observe and watch and ask questions and learn. And if at the very least, learn some of the nuances of the sport. And so I guess the way that I manage that is by setting clear expectations in the beginning of the time that they're gonna be helping me.
Good to know. Okay, next question is, would you describe your current position as your dream job, a good fit, or a stop along the way to something else?
I would
this is
say
a safe space.
somewhere between dream job and great fit. I mean, obviously my dream job, I would be making a lot more money than I am currently. With finances kind of thrown out the window, being at Camas High School in terms of the level of athletics, support from the athletic department, coaches, and everything like that, fantastic. Couldn't ask for better. The time constraints of being a teacher, also awesome. I mean, dream would probably be like working with professional athletics, but I really don't think that I would trade this in for a whole lot.
Why do you say professional athletics is your dream?
Just because of the high profile nature of it, just the fact that you're working with the best of the best athletes. I mean, again, like, I don't think I would trade what I'm doing right now for the journey of getting to professional athletics, because of all the time that would take to get to that point. So I guess to kind of back up.
Okay.
Dream job. Yeah. I'm happy.
Gotcha. Okay. In what ways does the clinical teaching, in what ways does the clinical teaching part of the position contribute or detract from how you feel about your position?
I think it really, so in CTE, and you know this as a CTE teacher yourself, it's, a big focus of what we do is not just the classroom learning component, but it's the hands-on kind of component. And I really, really think like the clinical education component of my job allows me to get kids interested in medicine, in healthcare careers, because it allows them to not just be sitting in a classroom learning from a book or learning from me or learning from projects, but it actually allows them to get their hands on with an actual patient that they're learning about an injury in class. I think it does nothing but boost healthcare professions, and makes my job more enjoyable because I get to make those connections from classroom to clinic.
So, and just to clarify, you're saying that it contributes to your position because you get to build relationships?
Because I get to build relationships, and I think it allows me to be a better teacher, because okay. I get to teach, a lot of my class is lecture based, which doesn't work for all high school students, but the clinical component allows students to get their hands on and relate what they're learning in the classroom into something that's real.
So if you did not have your teaching position, if we were just looking as an athletic trainer, mm-hmm. having the responsibility of guiding clinical, instruction, basically, mm-hmm. how do you feel like that would contribute or detract from your athletic training position?
So kind of functioning like a clinical coordinator, where you're not necessarily working in the clinic, but
more like if you were not teaching at all, and let's say I sent you some kids to look after.
Gotcha. How do you think that would contribute or detract from me as an athletic trainer?
Correct.
I've always kind of had teaching in my blood, I guess. It's always been something from even like a young age when I kind of reflect back on, being in high school, I was helping coach soccer and stuff like that. So for me, I think that it would just give me I would be able to put a teacher hat on, because we kind of already do that as athletic trainers anyways. Patient education is a big component of it. And so I think it just kind of would shift that patient education component a little bit more, not necessarily away from, but allow me to also at the same time work on clinical education. So I really only think that it could benefit, because in my years of teaching, I've kind of become a firm believer that the best way to learn is to teach. I've grown a massive amount as an athletic trainer just from researching the things that I'm teaching and making sure that I understand them better so that I can instruct them better. So to answer your question in short, I think it would only help.
Contribute. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. I lost my spot. That was good conversation. Approximately how many hours each week do you spend working? So we're talking about athletic training only. And then the follow-up question is, how many of those hours are spent in educating students in the clinical setting?
So unlike maybe like at the college level, I haven't yet required my students set a schedule, like a regular schedule, like you advanced student need to be here at this time on these days every week. Right. So it varies in terms of my contact directly with students doing clinical education. So it completely varies by week. It's going to depend on how many, because I have more clinical education going on at games versus practices. So if it's
Okay.
like athletic training room time, less kids come in for athletic training room time than they do for signing up for events. So if I have 4 events a week, I'm going to have way more contact time with students in clinical setting than I am if it's just a week of like tryouts or something like that. So to estimate in the fall, just athletic training time, not clinical or anything, or not clinical education, I'd say 3 to 7 every.
And it's a week too. Don't feel like you have to do the whole season.
Yeah,
just a week.
I was gonna say, so from 3 to 7:30 every day would be 4.5 hours times 5 would be 22, 24.
Yeah.
Plus maybe, depending on the week, I'd say about 30 to 35 hours a week as an athletic trainer in the fall. And that gets less and less throughout the year. Winter, spring, I have less training room time. And I'd say maybe about, on any given week, a little less than half of that is clinical education time with students in the athletic training room or events.
So if you had a 4-hour football game or 5-hour, like from athletic training, you were working a football game, you have students with you for those 5 hours. Mm-hmm. How much of that do you feel like you dedicate to formal instruction?
Maybe an hour.
Okay. Yeah.
So like I'll usually do about 20 minutes before kickoff. I'll give like a rundown of procedures and how it works for most students, considering it's the fall. Most students, it's their first event. And then, depending on the injuries that occur, I will kind of walk a student through what I'm doing. Again, it's going to be dependent on player and the game state and all.
How many injuries you got? Yeah.
Injuries I'm dealing with. Yeah. So I'd say maybe an hour is generous.
Okay.
For a football game. But actually, now that I think about that, the reason I have 4 students coming to the football game is that I will have one student. 3 of them are going to just kind of be out with water bottles in the huddle or in the group, right. And then one of them shadows me the entire time. So for an entire quarter, I've got a student on my heels asking me questions, talking, doing all of these things, and I'm bouncing pins off of them. So now that I think about that, probably more like
that's kind of tough, huh?
2 to 3 hours.
Okay. All right. So next question is, what are the positives about your current job just as an athletic trainer? Like, what excited you about your current job?
The athletics at Camas High School are really good. High level, competitive, just about every sport. Bless you. In just about every sport. It's financially speaking, I have a really, really, really nice budget for a high school. I have a lot of athletes that have a lot of support at home. So that is less stress to worry about. So that's good. I just love the way that this community supports their athletics program. I mean, in the high school in general, but the way that they support athletics is awesome. I mean, at a high school football game in Washington State, I have 6,000 people in the stands behind me. And so I think that's really cool.
That is. I'm curious, how much of being a teacher excited you? I know I'm asking you like kind of separate, but I'm curious, how much did I guess the perk of being a teacher add to what you do?
Perk of being a teacher?
Or not, is it a perk, I guess? Was that any part exciting to you?
I mean, financially speaking, absolutely. That's where most of my income comes from. Right. But, I didn't go to school to be a teacher. I went to school to be an athlete. And so I always kind of thought that high school was probably where I would land because it was something that always kind of interested me. But I am an athletic trainer because I like being up, moving, active, watching sports, occasional desk time to do documentation and things like that. So there's more sitting at a desk and being stationary and doing like tedious things like frameworks and getting your CTE certification and all of these other things that I'm not super stoked with that are definitely like the teaching component has a lot more tedious stuff that I don't enjoy. But it also enables me to have that interaction and that positive benefit or that positive relationship with kids and students that I really like, that I get a lot out of. So I would say the cons are at least balanced out, if not outweighed by the pros of just having the teaching.
Okay. In what ways do you provide mentoring for your athletic training students?
I mean, apart from being the athletic trainer that they're shadowing in the athletic training room.
Correct.
So I.
Or you could even explore that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, so I'll go in a different direction. So I'm the state officer director for our sports medicine specific CTSO. I have.
Can you explain for the audience what that means?
Yeah. So in high schools, CTSOs are career and technical student organizations. So CTSOs basically are things like when you're in high school, things like DECA, FBLA, FCCLA. They're these big national organizations that a lot of clubs have. Key Club would be example. That a lot of schools have that are basically student-led, student-run organizations that create networking and competition for a specific type of career and technical class. In Washington State, we have a very robust high school sports medicine program. I think one of the largest in the country. We in turn have a sports medicine specific CTSO. It's called the WCTSMA. It just rolls right off the tongue. But what my position there is that I am the advisor to a group of 12 officers that are elected from schools around the state. And in terms of going back to how that allows me to mentor my students is I have, I think because of my position, because of the enthusiasm that I have for the WCTSMA and because of my just having better insight on the processes and all of the cool things that WCTSMA does, I was able to kind of get a couple of my students excited about a possible opportunity. And last year, one of my students became the first Camas high school student elected to a state officer board. So she's now has the opportunity to represent Camas High School at the state level for sports medicine, which is an opportunity that I don't think that she would have gotten had I not been involved in WCTSMA.
So you help mentor your students get more involved on a state level.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel that you are a good mentor for athletic training students?
I'm not the best.
Why
I don't think
or why not?
So I tend to be a little like I could definitely require a little bit more like professionalism and like we goof around on the sidelines every once in a while and like I do my job well, but I think that just like I could be a little bit more strict if that makes any sense. Like I tend to allow students to, if they, I don't know, don't show up exactly according to dress code, I kind of look at it as like, it's more of a pain in the butt to send them home and then put on a different pair of pants that doesn't have one small little hole ripped in them than it is to just kind of give them a stern warning and say, don't do it again. And so I know that there's a lot more clinical instructors out there that are way more strict than I am. I think I could be a little more strict, but I also think that I have a good balance of being relatable and somebody that students want to be around. I found a good balance, but I definitely think I could be just a little bit more strict.
Yeah. Okay, switching gears for a second. What excites you about the athletic training profession?
What I tell people, I get paid to watch sports, and that's really cool. But other than that, I love helping people. I love being around active populations, active people. Like when I think about the professions that are like related to athletic training, like physical therapy, OT to a certain extent, other healthcare professions that kind of function in a similar kind of type or similar way. I don't want to work with geriatric patients. I don't want to work with somebody who like can, is overweight and doesn't really take care of their body that much. I like working with the populations that I work with. So that's one thing that I really like. I really like also, I don't like dealing, I'm not a money person. So I really like the fact that, and I know that this doesn't necessarily promote athletic training, but I like not being able to provide a treatment to somebody and it not be dependent on how much their insurance can pay for that treatment.
Gotcha.
I like being able to provide the best possible care that I can and not have to charge somebody to do that. Now I know I could make a lot more money if I was able to charge somebody to do that treatment. And that's kind of the pro and the downfall a little bit. But I think it allows athletic trainers to be a little bit more, provide better care than some other healthcare providers may be able to provide just because somebody can or can't pay.
Okay. In what ways do you model excitement about athletic training profession for your students?
In what ways do I model excitement about the field of athletic training for my students? My involvement with WCTSMA is very athletic training focused. It's a sports medicine organization, but it's pretty much it's athletic trainers teaching sports medicine classes, and so it's very geared towards athletic training, and a lot of our events are kind of geared towards that.
Yeah.
I look at most of the things that we explore in class are viewed through the lens of athletic training, and I express that to my students, and I let them know I'm an athletic trainer.
Yep.
That's what I do. That's what our lens is going to be in this class. And I other than that, I don't really, and other than just like general enthusiasm about my job that I think students can see that I don't hate my job. I kind of openly say athletic training isn't for most people.
It's what?
It's not for most people. It's a job with long hours. You don't get paid very well. You've got to be the right person to have this job. And I tell my students that. And I try and get students excited about athletic training that are interested in athletic training or that are interested in doing what I do. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
It does, absolutely. Hey, thanks for taking the time for this. I appreciate it. I appreciate